Hi everyone, Jeff Hall with the Westford Historical Society, and I'm here to give you a presentation on North Westford, from Groton Road to the Westford's northern border, which actually is in the town of Chelmsford. We're going to do this in two parts. We decided, my friend Rich McLaughlin, who was actually the chief person who did most of the research on this, myself, that we had worked together on a couple of projects. The Historical Society has done each one of the 5 villages in Westford. But what we found is that North Westford was not really covered. Why? Well, the railroads came through in the 1850s and actually built the 3 villages of Namnasset, Graniteville, and Forge Village. Parker Village was kind of an area off that was not well developed, much like North Westford, but we did not concentrate at all on North Westford. So that's what we're here to do today, at least part 1. We found that there was an awful lot more information than we anticipated, and it took quite a while to finish all of this. So, beginning with the first slide, I'm going to be making reference to 3 different maps. This is the North Westford map. This is the Hodgman map, 1730. And I want to show you, for example, beginning with Millstone Hill here. All right, look at some of the names. The Keyes family, the Bates family, the Chandler family, and the Adams family. Not very sparsely populated. The Adams family became a very prominent family in Chelmsford, but Westford was part of Chelmsford at that time. The Keyes family, well, you're going to see an awful lot more of them over the next 200 years or so. The second map I'm going to be concentrating on is the Sims map. Once again, looking at the right side of the map, beginning with Millstone Hill, you begin to see a few names that you hadn't seen before. The Reeds, for example, the Goulds, the Spaldings, Lynch, the Bates family we mentioned before, but the Hildreths as well, and the Murphys. Just to add a few more families. And then the next map is the 1875 Beers map. And you can see it's filled in that much more. A couple of key names you see on this one, okay, is the McDonough Hotel, the Dane family, the Gould family once again, okay, Tenney family. And if you look at the top right-hand corner of the map, you see G.W. Merrill. G.W. Merrill, Merrill's Quarry. So we're going to be talking an awful lot about him as time goes along. Okay, so let's start at the border with Millstone Hill. MIT Lincoln Laboratory, or Haystack Observatory at Millstone Hill, began with the purchase of over 300 acres in northwest Westford in June of 1956. Also in June of 1956, the town approves the erection of a radar station. And then on November 18, 1957, a long-range radar system is unveiled. I want to read you what was written on the back of this photo. A view of an experimental high-power long-range radar installation developed by Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Lincoln Laboratory at Millstone Hill in Westford. It was announced that the radar had been detecting the Russian satellites, Sputniks 1 and 2, at remote distances. The Millstone radar was designed for use as a research tool, but primarily for the study of problems in ballistic missile defense. So during the Cold War period, it really became a key element of our defense system as well. Millstone Hill and Observatory. Let's look, first of all, when you come up, before you enter, you see the old Blodgett Farm, which was located actually in Westford and Groton, and in which the MIT Observatory was built. MIT is on the former land of Fred Blodgett and others. So when Millstone, MIT came in, they ended up buying land from mainly Fred Blodgett's family, but also others as well. Looking at the photo on the right-hand side, you can see the Haystack Observatory down in the lower left-hand corner. That's Millstone Hill Observatory. Moving further up, the Lincoln Laboratory Space Surveillance Complex. And then at the top, the Haystack Observatory, or what we came to be known as, for our Westford residents, is the Big Giant Golf Ball. The next slide, you can see the construction of the Haystack Radome in 1961. This is the Big Giant Golf Ball, and you can see they're building the radar system within it. Okay? The next slide shows you the removal of the old antenna. So it was around for about 50 years, and in May of 2010, began the replacement. On the right-hand side, you see that big crane that was used. And on the left-hand picture, you can see the crane removing the giant golf balls. And the next slide will show you how it's being removed, the cap, and then the antenna is removed for demolition. And finally, the new radar system is placed inside of it. So this new one is about 10 years old, but we still have the big giant golf ball. Okay, let's move down Route 40. Okay, I'm often going to be referring to what you may see on the left-hand side of the road, which would be the north section. Let's start looking, first of all, at the Haystack Condominium Estate at 10 Groton Road. It was built on land taken by the town. The town took it as tax title in 1970, and the town sold it to the builder, who happened to be Bob Turney, in 1991. And condominiums were built in 1992. These were affordable units. 5 buildings consisting of 30 condo units built on land that was previously owned by the Woods family, which dates back to at least 1844. On the right-hand side, you see the 1992 plan of the Haystack condos, as I said, originally selling for between $75,000 and $80,000. Okay, moving further down, okay, once again on the left-hand side of the road, 28 Groton Road. This home today, which is owned by the Cronin family today, this house dates back to the mid-1800s. Farm workers were housed here for the Blodgett Farm. And it was much smaller at the time, I might add. The Cronin family has really expanded it. In the 1950s, Pete Bobrick operated the milk farm here. On the right-hand side of your screen, you see Pete Bobrick, who was a member of Westford Academy's class of 1936. Quite a ball player. Some of the articles I've been able to read, he and his brother Alex both were terrific baseball players. Okay. Then again, we move further down Route 40, Groton Road, and in the mid-1800s, the Woods family owned both of the farmhouses shown on the 1853 Sims map. One located at 37 and the other at 46 Groton Road. Let's first look at the one at 37 Groton Road. This house is still here today. J. Everett Woods, a Civil War soldier, and his family lived here in the 1800s and 1900s. The home is located at 37 Groton Road, adjacent to what we know as Cowdley Hill Road, which was also known by the people 120 years ago as Old Impassable, much because of the problems it had in the wintertime. Across the street, another Woods home was located at 46 Groton Road. This building is no longer here. It was the home of the Wright, Morrison, Blodgett, and ultimately the Carcota families, and the home was demolished in 2017. Now let's move further down Groton Road to the Connell Hog Farm, which was located at approximately 89 to 93 Groton Road in the 1950s and into the early 1960s. On the left-hand photo, you see John L. Connell, who's the owner and operated, and on the right-hand photo, John Connell's sons working the hog pens. I was just going to let you know that Connells were a very prominent family in the community and very active in the community. John Connell, Jr., went on to become Westford Town Council for a few decades. Joseph Cornell was the chief of police for some 25, 30 years also in the latter part of the 1900s. Billy Cornell, and if you see the next slide will show you, Tom and Bill, brothers working the farm. Bill became a prominent businessman in town. You'll see some of his works a little later on in this presentation. And then there's Tom and Dan. Okay, Dan went on to become a prominent lawyer in the community. Okay, now we move further down Groton Road. We're back on the left-hand side, and this house still stands today. This is the Erastus Wright house. He built this house, which is shown on the 1831 Hales map, right? Carl Wright was the last Wright to own this house. He sold it in 1980. Carl Wright, by the way, was a school teacher who lived on Long Island, and he used to bring his family up here every summer, and he worked the fields actually across the street, and this was their summer home. I spent a lot of time here with his younger son, Gilman, in and out of that house and in the fields down and back and across the street. Okay. His sister, Lillian Wright, also lived at 110 Groton Road. She was a Westford Academy graduate, and she taught at the Sergeant School from 1914 to 1959. She was a 5th grade teacher. Her last year, I was there in 1958 and 59. I didn't have her as a teacher, but she was one of the 2 5th grade teachers over there. She retired at the end of that year. And we have a picture of the Sergeant School 7th grade class of 1932. In the center, you can see Lillian Wright was the teacher. She's the back row. She's the 5th from the right. On the right-hand side of that picture is my dad, a 7th grade student at the time. And if you take a minute to read some of the other names, very prominent names, John Haley, the Gagnons, the Reeveses, the Hansons, the Cabos, the Belitas, all very prominent families if you went back 50 or 60 years. Okay, as we move further down Groton Road, you get to the Lyons Wright Schoolhouse, located at 125 and 127 Groton Road. Picture on the left-hand side, District Schoolhouse, which is shown in the 1831 map, was named after Erastus Wright, who established the school. It later became known as the Lyons School. This is a photo taken around 1900. The right-hand photo was taken in 1975. After the school closes in 1895, a group called the Fortnightly Club used the school as a meeting place for North Westford residents. And the Fortnightly Club, as the next slide will show you, was a social club of North Westford which held meetings at the former Lyons School from 1895 to 1914. The club met to discuss news of the day, literature and farming. At these meetings there were recitations, debates, music, songs, plays, and celebrations of the holidays for children and adults. This former school and club was later converted into a 2-family residence by Horace Gould. If you look at the picture on the right-hand side, that's the way it looks today, but that's the way it looked similar back in the 1950s and the 1940s when my parents were first married. We lived on the left-hand side of that home up until 1953 when my dad built his house on North Street. So I'm familiar with that one. Okay, the next photo shows you as you move down the Wright Lyons house located at Wyman's Corner. The Wright Lyons house was built in 1717. It was demolished in 2000. It was one of the 2 homes in Graniteville that you would have seen on the 1730 map. And in 1730, Jacob Wright lived here. This photo on the left-hand side is of circa 1900 and what it will look like. The right-hand photo shows you Old Groton Road. To the right, this area is known as Wyman's Corner because of the Wyman family that lived here in the 1900s. Those 2 houses you see to the right of the picture is the location where the Wright Lyons house was. Moving further down, once again on Route 40, the Wright Cemetery. Okay? Wright Cemetery was established in 1819. Bella Wright owned the cemetery in 1836, and in 1909, the town ultimately assumes responsibility of it. But it's prominent because, well, let's take a look at the gravestone on the right-hand side. That's the James Everett Woods family plot. They own many of acres of land. We said at 37 and 46 Groton Road. You'll see that his son Everett was a soldier in Company B, the 6th Massachusetts Infantry, during the Civil War. The next slide will show you is Wright Cemetery gravestones. The Erastus Wright family of 110 Groton Road. This is the family plot. Erastus helped establish as we said, the Wright School on Groton Road. On the right-hand side is the Hammett Wright family plot. Hammett Wright established a quarry behind his home on North Street, in the area of what we know today as the highway garage. But his son Clarence worked to develop the mercury vapor lamps and even early electric stoves. So, one of the Westford notables. Across from the Wright Cemetery was the long sought-for Baptist Chapel. And this land was donated by Cornelius Wright in 1893, and it worked as a chapel until it was disassembled in 1921 and made into a home at 109 Main Street, Westford. To the left-hand side, that's the old hymnal that was used. The copy of this, or this particular copy, can be found at the Westford Museum. The house at the right would be located on Main Street, right next to where Whitney's gas station is, which is next to what many of you would know as the Westford House and Pizza Plaza. Okay. Now we're kind of going to go off a little bit to the Hillside Cemetery, which is actually located at the corner of Depot and Nutting Road. And we mentioned the Hillside Cemetery, also known as the North Burying Ground, the Nutting Cemetery, that was acquired from Ebenezer and Thomas Wright in 1753. But we mention it because the early North Westford families, such as the Goulds, the Bates, the Keys, the Downs, the Nuttings, and the Wrights are buried here. This here is a headstone of Jacob and Abigail Wright. Captain Oliver Bates, you remember seeing his name on the 1730 map? He served in the Revolutionary War and was killed at the Battle of Bunker Hill on the 17th of June, 1775. The family lived on Tenney Road, okay, near Long Southpaw Pond. Okay. On the right-hand side, you have the Joseph W. Keys, a member of a prominent Keys family who also lived in North Westford. Okay, let's go back to the Lyons Wright Schoolhouse, and across from that is Gould Road. So we're going to be heading down Gould Road. I'll show you a map in a minute. But this, first of all, is the Gould-Picking Farm, also known as the Forest View Farm at 7 Gould Road. And I want to point to this picture taken in 1895. You have a picture of Horace Gould, Arthur Mary Woodward Gould. We mentioned this is the Woodward family was a very prominent family in Nabnasset at the time and owned the farm where the Nab Country Club is today located. There's Flora Blodgett Gould, okay, the Blodgett's very prominent family. Edwin H. Eddie Gould. Okay, Edwin H. Eddie Gould was the Mr. Gould that I knew as I grew up down the street from the farm, and then Edwin Gould, his father. Okay, here's the Gould farm circa 1900. Before the right side of the house is moved 90 degrees to form an L. And you can see in the next slide the photo showing the L, which was moved in 1900, and a farmer porch was added around 1915. And this 2019 photo shows you what it looks like today. But 4 generations of the same Gould family lived here, and 3 successive Gould family golden wedding anniversaries were celebrated in this house, which is well over 200 years old. Owners and occupants were Mr. and Mrs. Edward H. Gould and their son-in-law and daughter, Albert H. and Bernice Gould-Picking. On the property is the old schoolhouse number 8, which has been on Tenney Road in 1941. Albert Picking bought the old schoolhouse from George Burke and moved it to the Gould farm to use as a blacksmith shop and storage shed. The schoolhouse was restored in 2011. I'm going to get back to that. Remember schoolhouse number 8, because we have some information that's contrary to that. In 1998, Bob Webb and Bob Waskevitz, nicknamed the two Bobs, negotiated with the town to create a unique ownership agreement. It is now called Meadowbrook Farm. Today there are 2 rental units in the totally restored house and the restored barn and hostelries available for rent. Walking trails on town-owned land are nearby and available to the public. The next slide will show you the Gould barn. It was actually raised in one day. This is an older photo of it. Raised in one day. The old barn raisings were major community events. Of course, it's been restored. But in the front of it, the Gould-Picking marker was actually moved from across from Erastus's Wright house at 110 Groton Road around 1980. And if you get a close-up look at it, it's engraved with the year 1845 on it and an arrow pointing as well. What those two mean or the prominence of it, we don't know. The next slide show you it's given by Bob Webb and Bob Waskevitz, who entered into the contract in 1997 to preserve the open space. Here's a renovated copy of the Meadowbrook Farm, and on the right-hand side, you see the old milk room, which has been restored. It was built in the 1930s. By the way, my mom used to go down and get milk here from the Pickings. My family, my brothers go in, get the milk, and that's where we got our milk for years in this area. Okay, next one will show you the Gould-Picking Farm outbuilding. First of all, here we are once again with the Tenney Road Schoolhouse number 8, said to be brought back to the Gould family in 1941 and converted to a blacksmith shop. While doing research, my friend Rich McLaughlin came across this article in the Westford Wardsman. George H. Burke, who several years ago bought the new number 8 schoolhouse located on Tenney Road near Long Sought For Pond, has raised the building from foundation to chimney top to the level of the ground, and taxes were raised accordingly. So apparently he tore the building down for tax purposes. So what's this building? Well, we'll get into that a little later. Here's the Meadowbrook Farm tool shed in a 2019 photo. Okay. Then you have the cider press building. The Gould-Picking cider press built in 1873 was operated until 1975. Most of Westford's apples were pressed here. Okay, so they came from all over Westford, all of those apple farms, to this press. Okay, Steve McKenna photo. This was taken in 1997 before the renovation, and this is what it looks like today. Now shown as a shed of the Meadowbrook Farm, remodeled in the year 2000. Also, the Gould-Pickings had a sawmill and was still in limited operation until 1975. This 1943 USDA aerial photo gives you an idea. You can see the Gould farm there, 1943. But if you went past the cider shed, there was a road that went down and back, and that would have been the Gould sawmill. My older brothers told me that they worked here when they were 9 years old. I don't know if that's true. But I do know that my dad, on August 22nd, 1953, when he was building his house on North Street, bought 1 keg of 8 common nails from Eddie Gould and paid $11.05 per this receipt, number 523. Okay. All right, here we are at the 1853 Sims map showing locations of 4 homes on Gould and Keys Road. All right, let's take a look. First of all, what we're looking at here is number one, that is just past the Gould farm. As you travel further down to number two, that's going to be located at the corner of Keys Road, okay, and Gould Road. 3 and 4, as you can see on the map, are also locations of the Reed houses that we talked about. But I also want to point to this area here, Keys Pond, right? You can see Keys Pond, because I'm going to be talking about the Slifer house, which is located at the northern portion of this pond, okay? I'm also going to be talking about Wing Road, which is located right there, Wing Road, okay? And the Blodgett and the Frederick farms, okay? And then the Morrison property located here. This is 1853. First of all, number one, the George Keys home on Gould Road was located here, and it's shown on the 1853 Sims map. We were able to get photos of the remnants of the Keys home foundation. The home was gone by 1875. And here are some granite posts on the Keys property, also on Gould Road. Okay? Number two, moving further on down to the intersection of Keys Road and Gould Road, Joseph Keys lived here, shown on the 1730 map. Later, George Keys moves here, as shown on the 1875 map. This foundation is where the former home was built on at the junction of Keys and Gould Road. This home was built, but it burned in 1940, and no one ever rebuilt in the area after that. But I also want to point out to the field behind Keys Foundation leading to Conscience Hill, which you can see in the background there. It was previously pasture land. But why would the Keys have come to this area? Well, the early settlers, when they came into Westford, were looking for meadows. So they didn't have to do a lot of clearing. And this seems to be just the type of area that would have been ideal for that. You know, over the years, I mean, one of the very few areas you can still see quite a pasture, and it still looks like that today. Okay, moving further on down, on number three, no remnants of the home were found, and we looked all over to see if we could find anything. The R. Reed house, shown on the 1855 map, was originally a two-room house, expanded by 4 rooms in 1870 by the Fisk family. The Moore family were the last to occupy the home. It's no longer here. The Reed House Foundation, okay, the home we just showed you, and on the 1853 map, that's where the foundation is. And the Humhaw Brook, left of the Reed House, crossing under Keys Road. I also might want to add that this past summer, the summer of 2020, when that mini storm went through, this area received unbelievable damage to the trees around it. Okay, now we are now on the northern portion of Keys Pond, I had mentioned, and I'm going to be talking specifically about the Slifer lots 1 through 7. But this is a plan depicting camp lots in 1924. And what was happening, Picking family decided there was enough residents in the city areas that were looking to come out and buy property on lakes in this area where they could spend the summers. So this was one of the lot plans. Okay, the next one will show you the home of Ernest and Jean Slifer on Keys Pond, built in 1937 on former land of the Gould-Picking property. John Andrusano was able to give us this picture. On the right-hand side, this is what the Slifer home looked like today. Why the Slifer property? Why was it known? Well, the Slifers were well-to-do family. 60 years ago, when one of those house tours was given, this was one of the properties that was given on the house tour of Westford. The next slide shows you the Slifer conservation land, which was purchased in 1987 by the town. 3 acres of land with the household was sold to help afford the property, and this is a Lowell Sun photo of the upper area of that home. Okay, and on the right-hand side, you can see Slifer conservation land map. The next slide will show you the entrance located just off of Keys Road. Slide for conservation land. You can park, walk in, and the entrance area to the conservation land and the trail. Okay, now we go to Wing Road. 15 Wing Road, the Blodgett family, shown in the 1853 map. This house was built in the 1840s and was demolished in 2017. The Timberlake family has owned the property since 1959. This is a 1975 photo. Okay, the Timberlake Conservation Land and Trail on Tenney Road, and it was approved at town meeting in October of 2014. The town purchased it in February 2015 from the Timberlake family, consisting of approximately 45 acres of walking, jogging, bicycling, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, and picnicking. And there is yours truly on the right-hand side in that picture, standing on a granite bridge that was built probably by one of those early farmers as a means to get across that brook. And that was common in the 1800s to use granite slabs like this as a means to build very sturdy structures over waterways, smaller waterways. Okay. Also on Wing Road is a home where the Frederick family, shown in the 1853 map, lived. And it's a home today of the Zwicker family, and it has been since 1960. This is the house. On the right-hand side is the workers' quarters for the Frederick farm, which operated in the 1800s. We had a chance to go in and take a look at this. It's pretty fascinating looking at the old quarters and looking on the inside of it. It's kind of a storage area now. The next slide shows you the barn that was built in the 1850s, the mortise, tenon, and wood peg construction. Not in very good shape today, but as I said, it's been here for 170 years so far. So, okay. Here's a news article. This is at the intersection of Keys and Wings Road. And there's a news article from the Daily Courier in 1841 and a photo of the cranberry bog in 2019. And I bring the attention to this administrator's sale. It says, to be sold the dwelling of George Frederick, late of Westford, deceased at a public auction. So what was he selling? Well, 1 horse, 2 cows, 7 sheep, 10 cords of oak wood, 35 bushels of cranberries. So obviously this was a very productive cranberry bog at one time. Wendy Zwicker's family, who's here, said they're still getting cranberries out of there, cranberry bread and things like that, although it's no longer a major occupation. I was a little surprised to find out that we had a cranberry bog here. Also, at the intersection of Keys and Wing Roads, okay, the Andrew Spalding, 1701, 1768, he lived at 77 Keys Road. He was the deacon at the First Church of Westford and a weaver by trade. On the 1853 Sims map, it showed the farm as that of J. Morrison. Okay, now let's go back to Route 40. Okay, we were at the Wright Cemetery. Let's move further towards Chelmsford, and on the same side as the Wright Cemetery, we now have Pilgrim Village, which was established in 1983, built in consisting of 22 condominium units. Across the street is the Farmers Sand and Gravel operation. Here's a photo from where that operation existed, that white area on your map. Today, it now consists of the Veterans Memorial Complex with the Stony Brook Middle School and the Westford athletic fields that were built in 2002. I grew up around the corner from here, and that was all woodlands back in the 50s and into the 60s when my family lived on North Street. Next one. All right, let's take Keys, Tenney, and Dunstable Roads. These two maps, let's first take the Sims map in 1853 and look at some of the names. The Blodgetts once again, okay, the Goulds, all right, Brooks at the top of the map, the Brooks family. Hildeth family, right at the northern portion of Long Sought For Ponds. J. Dane, and getting down to Route 40, we have the Smith family. Okay? Looking at the same area in the 1875 map, we now have the Burke family, which has joined this area. And if you look down to the bottom of the map, you see the McDonough Hotel. And also the Sugrove family has moved into the area. We'll be talking about them an awful lot. Okay, let's take a look at the intersections of Groton, Keys, and Nutting roads. What you see on this map on the left-hand side that's Nutting Road in the forefront. Okay, across where that building is, that was the Blodgett home on the 1853 and 1875 map, the Wright home on the 1889 map, and the property was owned by J.A. Healy in 1910. Right? In the background, some of you remember what we called Caliente Hill. If you look at the left-hand side of that map, you see Dunstable, 8 miles, and Westford, 2 miles. Well, you're in Westford, but they were talking about getting to the center of town is 2 miles from here. Same area today, showing 4 Keys Road. You can see that building is now gone, but the Hayes family operated a farm here in the 60s and 70s. It grew corn, potatoes, pumpkins, and other vegetables. And today, if you go by there in the fall, you can see those big giant pumpkins out in front. Okay, restaurants became a major part of this area. Restaurants at 233 Groton Road. On the left-hand side, you can see the picture dating from around 1935 of the Casa Caliente. Later, the Red Line Junction. Rosina Paduano purchased this property in 1935. Rose, her sons Frank, Joe, and Tony operated the restaurant. In the early days, they were known for their spaghetti dinners. The business was ultimately sold in 1979. And this is an aerial view from around 1964. You can see the buildings in back where the Paduano families lived in those back buildings. Okay? The right-hand side says it was purchased by 3 friends, Wayne Legacy, Tom Murray, and Peter Sudak, in 1979, who owned the Red Line Junction, which operated until 1985. Interestingly enough, it opened in February of 1980. Very soon after that, they had a fire. But they rebuilt right away, and it was reopened again in that fall. This fire happened in 1980, and there's a picture of the building with the fire. The next photo shows you when it became Rancho de Amigos. But before that, it was HEW's operated by Hank Weiss in 1985. He was only in business for a couple of years, and then it was Rancho's, which was operated by Fred Reslow and Mary O'Brien starting in 1987, operating as a Mexican restaurant until 2005. What I might add is when it was the Red Line Junction, they had entertainment on the weekends. These were just restaurants. There was no actual live entertainment. But Reslow and O'Brien sold the facility, and it's demolished and made way for 7 buildings, which you see there contain 32 condominiums. And there's an aerial photo from 1964 showing the development of that area on the far right-hand side. That's Nutting Road, okay? And then there's the American service station and the building, which was Cornell's Liquor Mart and Caesar's Restaurant. Okay, the next photo, I'm going to take you, the Cornell gave us some, Cornell family was generous to give us some pictures to show the development of the area. Here, them breaking ground in the 1950s for Cornell's Liquor Mart, Caesar's Restaurant, and Cornell's Service Station. And then the construction nearly completed by Cornell's Liquor Mart and Caesar's Restaurant. Opening night for Cornell's Liquor Mart in the late 1950s, John L. Cornell, okay, who had run the hog farm, now was in the liquor business. And to the right-hand side, the original stores were Cornell's Liquor Mart Caesar's Restaurant, and later on the building, right of the building, was Dan Cornell's law offices, which was added in the 1970s. Owned and operated by Bill and Rita Cornell, a full-service gas station was located at 215 Groton Road. Oh, by the way, if you look at that photo on the left-hand side, and to the very right of the photo, you see Westford Police. That was one of the 2 cruisers that the town had in the 1960s. Things are a little different today. Okay, Cornell's, the right-hand photo shows Cornell's American Service Station, also known as Westford Tire Mart. And what you see at the top, these were billboards. And I want to read the one about, hey, turn around. You passed Bill Cornell's Super Service, okay, with Atlas tires on sale now. We believe this was located in the area of the field next to where Wright Cemetery is. Okay. Businesses today at the former Cornell property on Groton Road. It's known as Town Plaza. It contains a Dunkin' Donuts, Mario's Restaurant, Town Convenience Store, Edward Jones, Salon 40, Kara's Nails and Spa. And Cornell's old gas station is now Dominic's United Gas and Service Station, May of 2019. Across the street, we talked about John Cornell's son, William. The Spalding farm of William and Rita Cornell was formerly off of Keys Road. It was established here in 1962. Its entrance was later moved to St. Augustine Drive, which is a little further up Groton Road. The Spalding Hill Farm, okay, on this photo to the left-hand side, showing the farmhouse, hog barn, and also Keys Pond at the top of the map. Rita and Bill Cornell raised their 10 children here. And this is a photo from the mid-1980s. And here's a hog barn in the 1990s, the hog pens on left, the right of the barn. Okay, the next photo shows you an overview of the Spalding Hills Farm and the Spalding Hills Stables. The hog barn on the left, the horse barn and corrals on the right. This area was for raising livestock, hogs, sheep, turkey, and ducks, all for commercial sale. In the right-hand map, you see stables for horses grazing at the farm. So let's move back to Keys Road. Keys Pond was named after the Keys family who settled in this area in the 1700s. Keys' ancestors were the first settlers at Francis Hill off of Chamberlain Road. So as Chelmsford expanded in the 1650s, off of Francis Hill Road, that's where the original Keys family was in Westford. As you can see, they moved into other areas of the town. Okay, this is a photo from the 1730 map of the area. And it's a view of Keys Pond from the east side in 2019. The next photo on the left-hand side, Keys Pond and Road on the east side of Keys Pond. This is an early 1900s photo, courtesy of WestfordCAT Scout Reservation book in 2007. Now, I want to point out that as you look at that map, to the left-hand side of that map, there are no houses there at the time. No houses. This is early 1900s. Here's Keys Pond and the road in October of 2019. Okay, and there are many houses along Keys Road now. The next photo talks about the Boy Scouts camp on Keys Pond, Camp Wagunkug. In the summers of 1919 and 1920, Camp Wagunkug was the summer camp for the Lowell Council of the Boy Scouts of America. It was located on Keys Pond, probably on the northern or western side of the pond, as it was advertised as being a mile hike from Nutting's Bridge. The boys slept in large surplus army tents. The name is said to be that of the Praying Indian Towns, founded by Puritan missionary John Eliot, that he established for Native Americans who converted to Christianity. It is usually given as Mugunkocog. It is located in the present town of Hopkinton. The right-hand side of the map shows the abutments on Tenney Road. This is where they used to embark. There was a bridge over those abutments on Tenney Road. That's where the trolley ran. And the fare from Lowell to Westford was 25 cents. The next slide gives you an idea of what they did, how to reach it. It said for $5.50 a week, with a 50-cent discount if they brought their Scoutmaster, boys would enjoy a week-long scouting program. Sports, archery, swimming, and crafts were most of the daily activities. The program ran for 4 weeks, and scouts would get to camp from Lowell, as it said, by 25 cents via the trolley car. I just want to point out on the right-hand side is a photo that was taken at Camp Guncog on Keys Pond. And each day the camp promotions targeted boys were much more easily sold on the adventure and fun of summer camp. Scout camps would promote the benefits of their programs on the campus' health. It's interesting because parental fears and uncertainty were not trivial, because in 1918 through 1919, the Spanish flu would kill 500,000 people in the United States. Infectious disease and accidents were the source of real concern. 100 years later, here we are. When I showed you that picture of Keys Road in 1919, and I said there were no homes, well, here is a plan for homes. Okay, once again, the Gould-Picking land now is up for sale, and what they've done is they've divided a plan for camp lots in Westford, and this is Richard Picking's land actually at the time, but he's selling off the land for camps. Okay, what do the camps look like? Well, next photo. Cottages on Keys Pond. These are cottages on Keys Pond at the north end. This is what a typical camp would have looked like in the 1930s and 1940s. Okay, of course they're much different today, but this is what those would have looked like. Next photo will show you the Keys Pond aerial view in 2019. I mentioned that descendants of the Taft Franklin families camped on this pond. In the area where Pilgrim Village is located, down near the water, there were 2 camps, and descendants of William Howard Taft's family and actually Ben Franklin's family, from what we're told from some of the residents on the pond, actually were the people who rented or who had these campsites. I would mention that also still living on the pond in another area is Cindy Taft, who told me that it was, yes, she believes that they're descendants of William Howard Taft. As we go further down Keys Road, we turn on to Tenney Road. And at 22 Tenney Road, this home was built in 1850 and was owned by the John Lynch family, per the 1853 Sims map. And in 1870, the Dennis Burke family buys the property. Probably one of the most prominent Burkes was George H. Burke, and his obituary from the Lowell Sun on January 7, 1952. He was the husband of Catherine P. O'Brien Burke and was a well-known native of this town. He died at his home this morning after a long illness. He was born in Westford on November 14, 1871, the son of Dennis and Abigail Burke. The deceased lived in the same house in which he was born until his death. How often do you see that? Burke was educated in the Westford schools, was a farmer, and one of the most successful cattle dealers in the state. He was an attendant of St. Catherine's Church of Graniteville, a member of the Mass National Guard during World War I, and served with the city of Boston during the Boston police strike. He would have served along with William C. Rodenbush and my grandfather, who were also part of that. Burke was also active in town affairs, and for many years was known because he drove the school bus from the north end of town. Okay, this is the Burke farm. And here we are again with the long sought-for schoolhouse number 8 on Tenney Roads, as shown on the 1853 map, 1875, and again on the 1889 maps, okay? So on these 3 maps in the 19th century, they do show a schoolhouse in this location. I'll read you what it says. The schoolhouse number 8, long sought for school, originally located in the property at 19 Tenney Road, was built in 1885. So it would have replaced the other school that was found in the 1853 and 1875 maps. In 1897, average enrollment was 10.9 students as an average. And so by 1898, voters were asked to approve a motion to close the school and transport the pupils to the Wright School. Okay? We think, Rich and I believe this is also inaccurate because the Wright School was closed in 1895. So they probably were transferred to the Sergeant School. Okay? It says in 1909 it was sold at public auction to George Burke for $405. And then it says how Albert Picking bought the property and moved it. We think this building was moved to the Gould-Picking farm in 1941. Could this be the first schoolhouse built prior to 1885? If you look at the architecture, picture on the left-hand side and the one on the right-hand side that was moved, they're decidedly different, okay? So we believe this would have been another outbuilding probably by George Burke, maybe the original schoolhouse, number 8, but we don't believe it was the one on the left-hand side because it was torn down. Okay, moving further on down, we're at 44 Tenney Road, shown as the Gould Farm on the 1853 Sims map. In 1950, it was Fred L. Snow's farm. In 1922, Kitty Hoffman of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, buys the property and she establishes the Sunnymead Farm and operates an inn here. And then, from 1939 to 1943, Hoffman sells land to 7 different Italian families from the Boston area who then build summer camps. They had become familiar with the area because they came up to the site where the American Legion is located today, which was actually a Christian area for summer kids from the city. And I'll get into that an awful lot later on in this presentation. In 1943, Joseph and Mary Vitello buy the farmhouse, and then it sells in 1958. On the photo on the right, Vitello's son Angelo Vitello had a cottage here on Long Sought For Road. His daughter, Fran Vitello Murphy, wrote of this cottage in her family's experience from 1946 to 1954 at Long Sought For Pond in her 2000 book, I'm Italian, I Can't Help It. It's an interesting read on a little bit of the history of North Westford because she talks specifically about the Burke farm and also the Dubinsky and Johnson farm as well, and her interactions with those people on those 2 areas. Also swimming on Long Sought For Pond. So, okay, moving to 170 Dunstable Road, and if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the Hales map from 1831. Doesn't give you any names, but that blue arrow is pointing to the Foster Brooks farm. The Brooks family, they were a large landowner who owned another farm on Dunstable Road, which was sold to John Dane in 1834. We're going to talk an awful lot more about John Dane and his family a little later on. Okay? The home on the right, not the way it looked when Foster Brooks owned it in 1831, but this is the location of where the Foster Brooks home was. Okay, the next slide moves to 58 Tenney Road. You are familiar with this area. You remember this house, which was located right on the corner of Tenney Road and Dunstable Roads. And you wondered how it hadn't been hit 1,000 times. But the house was the Bannister farm on the 1853 Sims map. In the early 1900s, it was Fred A. Snow's Overlook Farm, then purchased by Minnie Book in 1915. It was owned by the Dubinsky Johnson family since 1920 and consisted of 66 acres for hay, cows, and it had 2 large coops for chickens. This photo was taken in March of 1971. The demolition of this property was on April 21st, 2020. The left photo shows the fireplace and the cooking ovens on the first floor. The right photo shows the basement cooking fireplace. That would be right down the bottom of that picture, okay? Old construction, all fireplaces, many of the homes operated the same way. A Westford treasure, now gone. Okay, Dubinsky Farm. Here's some artifacts from the Dubinsky Farm. Left-hand side, these were receipts. John Dubinsky was selling his eggs to the Woodland Dairy Incorporated in Watertown, Mass. So they used to come up, buy lots of eggs, and bring them back to the Boston area, and they were sold down there. When we were going through the house, Rich found these cardboard milk caps in the Dubinsky farm, and they were used for the glass bottled raw milk. And you were told to wash your bottles and then return it back to their original owner. Most farms in the area that did this did the same thing, had their own caps though, okay? All right, looking at the 1853 Sims map again, showing at the bottom of that map, you see S. Smith. That's the Smith Tavern. A little further up, you see J. Dane. Okay, that was the Dane farm. And then the Hildreth homes are located. James and Jesse Hildreth. Well, that's where Summer Village is located today, where the Hildreths are. Where J. Dane is located, that's where the Nabnasset Legion is. And S. Smith, that's where well, let's look at the next slide. The Brick Tavern at 66 Groton Road. Here's some history. The first Brick Tavern was built around 1770 and was used as a halfway stopover from Cambridge, Mass. to Keene, New Hampshire. Travelers and coaches would stop here for a meal or for the night. During the 1840s, Moses Gill of Groton was the proprietor of this halfway house. Halfway house meaning it was halfway between Keene and Cambridge. In the 1850s, it was known as the Smith Tavern, as can be seen on the Sims map. And on the 1875 map, John and Bridget McDonough operate this tavern, known as the McDonough Hotel. Later in 1875, Alan Fisher purchases the tavern from McDonough, and then Matthew Downs becomes the keeper of that tavern. In 1880, Downs himself purchases the tavern from Fisher. A few years later, a fire destroys the tavern, in which Matthew Downs rebuilds a duplicate of the original tavern. Matthew and Mary Prentice Downs operate the tavern, which is in operation until 1927. Their daughter Florence Hutchins inherits the property then. The 3 advertisements you see at the bottom all relate to the Brick Tavern. Down the bottom you see it says Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. That's when the stage was coming through and would have stopped at the Brick Tavern. Okay? The left ad, for sale in 1865, public house, barn, and outbuildings, 30 acres with farm, land, and pastures, and 150 fruit trees. The ad on the right was for lease of the Brick Tavern in 1868, with grove, boats, and more, as it says. So this is just a couple of interesting articles that Richie ran across during his research of this area. Okay, Downs Brick Tavern, Matthew Downs at 266 Groton Road. Matthew and Mary Downs were the tavern keepers of the Brick Tavern, as he said, starting in 1875. But they bought the property. And what you see on the right-hand side in that photo is a celebration, May 1st, 1884, of the wedding of Henry Hutchins and Florence Downs, showing the Downs family, the Sugros, and others at the Brick Tavern. Okay, the next photo will show you Matthew Downs, who was born in Vassalboro, Maine. Prior to Westford, he was the tavern keeper at the Middlesex Tavern in Lowell. He was also captain in the militia, a policeman, granite quarry owner, farmer, watchman, mill worker, local historian, and a storyteller. According to the article you see in the center, Matthew drank a toddy a day of rum and water. His brick tavern also served campers at Long Sought for Pond, refreshments, fruits, eggs, candy, tobacco, and other supplies. Downs actually met with Henry Ford, Harry Firestone, and Thomas Edison at the Wayside Inn in 1924. He died in 1927 at the age of 101, okay? And I just want to point to the three articles you see at the bottom. One was a liquorator at the Old Brick Tavern. This was from the Westford Wardsman on July 5th, 1919. The middle one is just an article about Matthew Downs when he turns 100, being one of the state's oldest innkeepers, and his obituary in the Lowell Sun in 1927. He dies at the age of 101. Good life. A couple of other photos, the Old Brick Tavern, rooms, cafe, and supplies. This is a 1925 photo. And you can see, essentially, it looks the same even in 2019. They've redesigned the Groton and Dunstable Road intersections, but the tavern looks an awful lot like it used to. The next photo will show you the Sinclair gas station and Dot's ice cream. Okay? If you look to the right of that photo, that's the Brick Tavern. That's Dunstable Road. And then, to the left, the Sinclair gas station, originally built and owned by Charlie and Dot Sleeper, was located at Groton and Dunstable Road. That's the gas station, Sinclair gas station. It was later owned by Billy Cornell, by the way. And Dot's Ice Cream, which was located here. Now, by 1986, the Getty service station had bought the property, and now it's the BP service station, if you're wondering what this location is. The next photo, we move up to the Dane Homestead. Dane Homestead on Dunstable Road. This is the present day site, once again, of the Nabnasset Legion. But let's get some of the background. John Dane purchases his farm in 1834 from Foster Brooks. Okay? He was a farmer, painter, and stonecutter. John and Sarah Ingalls, another old family name, Dane had 11 children. Son John Jr. became a prominent lawyer in New York. Son Hiram took over the farm. William was killed in the Civil War. Okay? And this is on the left-hand side, the Dane Homestead at Dunstable Road. On the right-hand side, okay, is John Dane's son Hiram and Sarah, his wife, Dane, and their daughter, Sarah Josephine. Hiram was a painter and a farmer. They had 3 children, Ernest, Fred, and Sarah Josephine. Now the next photo shows you a picture of Hiram Dane. He is in the Mojave Desert between 2 cactuses. You also have a picture of his granddaughter, Grace Amy, his grandson, Clarence, who entered the service in 1918. All of them were at Dunstable Road at Long Softball Pond. The picture of Grace, by the way, is at her prom. So what happens to the Dane family? Well, you saw Hiram in that picture between the 2 cactuses. The word is he really fell in love with that area of the country. So they decided, okay, it's time to sell off the Dane property that we've owned for some 80 or 90 years on Dunstable Road. So he passes 20 acres to a Boston church and sells the remainder to Joseph Allen. Okay? Where it says about town, the Hiram Dane farm, bordering on Long Sought for Pond and sold within a year to Boston parties, is being laid out into streets and camp lots. That part of the farm lying between the Dunstable Road and the pond already have several street and summer camps. An office has been established close to the Dunstable Road under the management of the Long Sought for Pond Camp Company. The first 3 streets are named after the pond. And I'll get to that. I want to show you that map. Camp lots on Long Sought for Pond are selling for $75 and up. Okay? At the next slide, you can see the Danes sell their land to Joseph Allen in 1912. Allen develops bungalow sites on the sale. Take a look at the names of the roads. Starting with the right side, you have Long Road, Sought For Road, Pond Road, Dell Road, Beatrice Road, and Olive Road, with Hillside Road in between them. Those are the same names those roads have today. And we're going to stop there. This presentation is to be continued. Look for the second part in early 2021. We wish to thank the following people for contributing to the North Westford history. Nancy Guattari was very helpful up at MIT and Lincoln Labs. And by the way, we're hopeful that somewhere when COVID has passed, that we'll be able to run the Historical Society in conjunction with MIT. We'll run some buses up there for tours. The Connell family, for their many photos, very prominent in this area of town, and we thank them for the photos they showed us. The Blades family, descendants of Matthew Downs. Richie got in touch with them. They contributed a lot of pictures, gave us a lot of background information. Joe LaPiana and Joe Giuliana were families that came up here and whose parents came familiar with the area because they were part of that mission where the Legion is located. Fell in love with the area and ended up buying land. And there were many others, particularly those who had done research in the past that helped us put this together. So look forward to seeing us, part 2, early in 2021. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the history, and please visit and support the Westford Museum, open 2 to 4 most Sundays.